Have you ever dealt with feeling like you're not growing fast enough on the drums? If so, today's lesson is for you. There's a painful truth about drumming progress that we all must face if we're going to succeed at mastering the drums. The question is, when you face it, what will you do? Here's the deal. Understand this truth and how to overcome it, and you will grow faster, and you will enjoy the journey to drumming mastery much more, and you'll reap the rewards of your effort. I'll show you how this works today. You can do this. Welcome to the Non-Glamorous Drummer. I'm so glad you're hanging out today. I help self-taught beginner drummers know what to practice so that they can nail songs, sound awesome with a band, and be the drummer that other people want to jam with and want to have in their band. And hey, speaking of knowing what to practice, and especially if you are new here and if you are a beginner, I really want to help you do just that. If you are a busy drummer who feels like you don't have a lot of natural talent, you feel like you don't have a lot of time to practice, and you just kind of feel disorganized, like what should I be practicing? Everybody's telling me this and that and that, and there's a million drum lesson videos on YouTube. What should I really focus on if I want to grow in the next few months and especially in the next year? Well, I've got your answer right here. I've got a free PDF resource for you. It's called the Know What to Practice 3-part daily practice guide for busy drummers. And this guide is so cool because basically what we do is we break up all of drumming mastery into 3 categories. And when you master each of these 3 categories, you master the drums. And when you practice a little bit from this category, a little bit from this one, a little bit from this one, you know that your practicing is balanced, and you know that you're not going to have any holes. You know that you're not going to leave anything behind. You're going to make sure that you're actually reaching drumming mastery day by day, week by week, month by month. This guide has helped out so many drummers. Lots of good stuff in there. There's coordination exercises. There's tips on hand technique, tips on music, listening, learning songs. Like this is everything right here. So go grab it, especially if you're a beginner. The Know What to Practice PDF guide is going to help you out a bunch. My free gift to you. All right, let's dive into today's lesson. The painful truth. Are you ready for it? Here it is. You have to be bad at the drums for a while before you'll be good. I know it sounds really obvious, but have you ever stopped to realize this? And more specifically, and more importantly, have you accepted this? Have you accepted this as a truth, as a fact of mastering the drums, that you have to be bad at the drums for a long time before you'll be good? This whole thing makes me think of a funny conversation that I had with somebody not long ago where I think I told them, how long I've been playing the drums, and they were like, wow, you must have been really bad for a long time before getting good. And it was the funniest response. I never heard anybody say that, but I was like, yeah, you're exactly right. I was bad for a really long time. That's part of how it goes. You got to be bad for a long time to get good. And that's so true. And that's why this is a big drumming truth. And we've got to learn how to deal with this and how to overcome this, how to be okay with it, and then how to get really good and master the drums. And what's funny is that so many students over the years have voiced to me their frustration about the pace of their growth. So I'm going to tell you word for word some survey responses that maybe you told me one of these things. If you're on my email list, you get my surveys every once in a while. I'll send out a big survey saying, what are your biggest drumming frustrations that I can help you solve this year? And here's some really common things that I hear. Learning is slow, not improving at a good rate, running out of time. I would like to grow faster. Feeling like I'm slower to progress than I'd like, or slower to progress than I'd like. Patience, so just that one word. I'm struggling with having patience. I know that it's going to take a while and I don't have patience. Slow pace of improvement. So many of these things, it's just feeling like I'm not improving fast enough. That is the number one struggle here. So let me ask you a question. What's your hurry? I'm just going to let that one float there for a second. We're going to circle back to that. What's your hurry? I was terrible at the drums when I was in high school. Somewhere out there, somewhere on YouTube, you can find video of me playing with the high school worship band in my church, circa 2009, 2010, when I was in high school, and it's not good. I'm not going to look for those videos. I'm not going to link them here, but just want you to know that out there somewhere on the internet, there are videos of me playing drums in high school, and I was not good. But I was having an absolute blast on the drums. Why? Because I didn't know how terrible I was. That always helps. Ignorance is bliss. But also I was enjoying the process. And so honestly, I would say I was pretty bad at the drums for about 6 years. Like looking back in hindsight now, from when I started taking drum lessons in high school to when I got to the point where my playing was actually at a competent professional level where I could get paid to play gigs, That was about a 6-year time span. Now, it didn't take 6 years to get to where I was playing with a band. I got dragged into the worship band at my church within about 2 months. Started taking drum lessons. I'd been fiddling around at home for a while before that as a kid. Started taking drum lessons in high school, got dragged into the high school worship band at my church. I was terrified. It was my first gig ever, terrified to play in front of people, just afraid of train wrecking and messing up. And I had plenty of those mess ups and train wrecks and bad fills and counting off songs at the wrong tempo and wrecking the band. Trust me, I've been there. It has happened. But that was the trial by fire. And after doing that a whole bunch, playing at church a bunch, playing gigs in college, taking drum lessons, practicing hours a day, 6 years. 6 years of not really sounding great before I think I reached a point where it was kind of that crossover into, you know what, my playing is now polished and professional. That's how long it took me. And so I just want to tell you that so that you understand there's going to be significant time of sounding bad before you're going to sound good. Even if you have all the time in the world to practice a whole bunch and play a whole bunch and listen to music a whole bunch and do all the things, it's going to take a while. But maybe the harder question here is, what do you do as a mature adult learning the drums who is aware of how bad you sound? Because it's one thing when you're a high school kid and you can just have a blast playing and it's just awesome because you have no idea how horrible you sound and you're just having fun jamming with your friends and playing your favorite songs. And that is an awesome place. And I look back on that and sometimes I wish I could still get back into that mental space of just going at it, playing a song, and I sound terrible, but man, I'm having fun. Such a cool time in life, and maybe you were fortunate to do that, and maybe that's where you are now. Maybe you're in high school, you're in college, and you're like, Steven, that's me. Good for you, that's awesome. Enjoy that while it lasts. But hey, if you are a mature adult and you're getting back into the drums now in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, like so many of my best students are, you're aware of how bad you sound, and that's a struggle, and that's tripping you up, and you're like, man, I sound terrible. When will I ever sound good? How am I supposed to stick with this and stay inspired and stay motivated? Well, here's where we're going today. We're going to talk some more about hurry. We're going to circle back to that question. But ultimately, I believe it all starts with gratitude. If you learn to find joy in the process of learning the drums, you will succeed. And how do you find joy? Well, slowing down, looking at the big picture, really zooming out, and taking stock of where you are and where you've been, and being grateful for that, and looking back and being like, hey, I had no drumming skill last year, but I bought an E-kit, I bought some practice pads, I've been playing a little bit, and I made some progress, and I've got some favorite songs, and I've got this favorite drummer that I watch and that I listen to. There's some things to be thankful for right there, and there's some joy in that too, and hopefully you're finding a lot of joy in the music, in listening to the music, and that's where your motivation is coming from. But hey, let's get really practical, because I know we've been talking about a lot of the aspirational stuff here. We've been talking about the mental mindset struggle here. But in any lesson, I want to get really tactical and practical and give you some clear action steps. So let's do that. I'm even going to give you a book to read. We're going to get so practical. I'm going to give you a book to read that has nothing to do with drumming, but it'll help you with this. So here's our action steps. We're going to talk about how to solve this painful truth in 3 steps. Here we go. Step 1, be okay with sounding bad early on. And maybe for a while, if we're honest. Be okay with sounding bad, maybe for a little while. I know I've already said that, but let's unpack this a little bit and get more specific. Challenge yourself to get just a little bit better each day so that you're only competing against yourself yesterday. A big question I get from students is, how do I measure my progress? Like, how do I know if I'm as good as I should be or if I've made as much progress as I ought to? And sure, we could do a bunch of surveying, and I'm sure other people have done studies on this, and we could figure out, okay, on average, drummers reach this point here, and this point here, and that point there. And we could do that, but I don't think that would be that helpful to you, because then suddenly you'd be trying to compete against all the other drummers out there, and if you get behind, you're going to be feeling so discouraged you might quit. Because I know how this is. We tend to compete against other humans because that's what we like to do. A lot of us have a little bit of that competitive spirit. And if we feel like we're not keeping up, we get discouraged and overwhelmed and frustrated and defeated and depressed, and we quit. So there's definitely a flaw in that whole mindset, and that's why I want you only competing against yourself. The way you're going to measure your progress is based on where were you yesterday or where were you last week, because sometimes you don't feel like you make progress day to day and week to week, but then when you look back a little bit further, you look back at that recording or video of yourself that you made last month, and you're like, wow, I actually sound a lot better than I did last month. And that's why, another side note, I didn't have this in my outline, but a side note here, record yourself all the time. Make videos of yourself, because that can be super encouraging when, a year from now, you can go back and have this whole library of videos of yourself and go back and watch those. and be like, wow, look at where I came from. That's the way it is for me. I told you about those horrible videos of me playing with the student band back when I was in high school. Even when I was in college, I could look back at those and see, wow, I was terrible then. I've gotten a lot better. Now I can look back at myself in college and be like, wow, I've gotten so much better than when I was in college. And hey, you can go back to some of the early videos on this YouTube channel. This is hilarious. And I probably shouldn't even tell you this, but if you sort all the videos here on the Non-Glamorous Drummer from oldest to newest, you're gonna find some old drum covers I did in college that are not great. And you're gonna find, you're also gonna find a video, I think you're gonna find 2 videos called Epic Drum Solo. One's called Epic Drum Solo, the other's called Epic Drum Solo 2. These are just not good, especially the first one. I did this early on in college, and it's just me playing a bunch of randomness on the kit. I think this video is still up, I'll have to check. But you can watch this just to see for yourself how terrible Steven was early on in college. And you can see how terrible my early YouTube videos were. I've gotten better at this over the years. It just takes time. And so you have to only measure yourself against where you were yesterday, where you just were recently. And so in making YouTube videos, that's always what I had to do, not pay attention to what the competition, really they're not competition, but it's easy to see it that way sometimes if we're honest. It was easy for me to look at what other drummers and other educators on YouTube were doing and compare my videos with theirs, but what good was that gonna do? Thankfully, I learned early on, I should only compare this YouTube lesson I'm making today with last week's. Is it better than last week's? Is it better than last month's? Am I figuring out new, better ways to do this? And so that's what it comes down to. You've got to measure your progress against where you were yesterday. That's gonna help so much with overcoming that whole toxic mindset of constantly not feeling good enough. Because if you're only comparing yourself with the child prodigies on YouTube and those drummers that just seem to learn everything fast, you're always going to be discouraged and defeated. Okay, step 2, keep a practice log of specific goals, specifically short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. So this is really a topic for a lesson all its own. And actually, I have a mini course all about this for my paid membership students. It's called Practice Smarter, Not Harder, and we talk about a lot of this in that course. But to kind of give you this in a nutshell, short-term goals are things usually having to do with technique. Like, you know what, I want to be able to get to where I can, do a nice smooth beater bounce on the kick drum, or I'm not burying the beater. I just want to get to where I'm no longer burying the beater this week. That's a great short-term goal. Or I want to work my fulcrum to the point where I've got this smooth up and down motion with the stick, and I can play these nice automatic singles. That's a great short-term goal. Or, another good short-term goal might be playing hi-hat barks or hi-hat open notes, like, random little things like that. Those are often very good short-term goals. A good midterm goal might be something having to do with coordination, something that's a little bit more of a bigger picture, but still kind of technical. Maybe it's play this favorite song front to back and be able to play it like the record. A lot of times that's a good midterm goal when it's not too difficult of a song. Maybe there's a certain groove exercise from a method book you're working through, or maybe one of my PDF e-guides, like the 30-day coordination guide, the 25 popular grooves and fills guide. Maybe your goal is just to get through one of these and learn a bunch of this material. That's a really good midterm goal. Then long-term, for the long-term goal, we want to think aspirationally and think motivationally. What is the big thing that I see myself doing a year from now, maybe 2 years from now? What is that big thing? Maybe it's gigging with a really good band. And so maybe your long-term goal is to get in a band. And maybe there's a specific goal of get in a band that plays every month, or a band that at least gets together and jams every week or something like that. And so that's a really good long-term goal. And then those short-term and midterm goals are helping you get there. And so that's helping you have a practice plan. And so that's critical. Keep that practice log. But equally important, step number 3 is keep a log of your drumming wins. Take time to be thankful for where you're at in your playing and where you've come from. That helps so much with step 1. This is the even more practical way to help you out with step 1. This helps so much with only comparing yourself to where you were yesterday. Like if your grip got just a little bit looser today, write that down. That's a win. And so your grip is looser today than it was yesterday. That's a win. You were moving forward. You were progressing. If you felt just a little bit more freedom with your kick foot, like as you're playing along, you're like, hey, I wasn't able to tightly play that kick drum pattern before, but I played it today. That's a win. Write it down so you don't forget it. If you were able to hold down that groove in that favorite song for the first time, write that down. That is a huge win. You've got to celebrate the wins here because otherwise you're only going to be caught up on the things you can't do. This is something that people in the business space talk about all the time. People who are teaching entrepreneurs and basically encouraging you, as if you own a small business and you're trying to grow a small business, if you don't celebrate the little wins along your journey, you're only going to compare yourself to those big businesses that maybe you're never going to reach the level of. Celebrate where you've come from so that you're only comparing yourself with where you've been. And this is such a practical step to help you out with that. But hey, one more thing. Of course, I want you to follow these action steps. I want you to get organized with your practicing and logging these things, recording yourself, and always just knowing where you've come from, knowing where you were yesterday, last week, last month, because that really will encourage you. But, we can get a little bit deeper with this. I asked you earlier, what's your hurry? Why are you trying to hurry through all of this? Why are you so frustrated with a lack of progress? How do you know that you're not progressing fast enough? How do you know that where you're at isn't exactly where you're supposed to be at? How do you know you're behind? How do you know that you're not growing fast? That's really my big question. And what's your hurry? Well, there's a really cool book that I want you to read. It's also really cool looking with this bright orangey red cover. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. This is a really cool book. So it's basically about the life of Jesus and how Jesus grew this massive ministry and gained this huge following 2,000 years ago within just 3 years. 3 years of doing ministry, and he accomplished so much and was so effective and was one of the most productive people in history. And yet he was never in a hurry. And so that's what's fascinating. That's what this book is about. So for me, as a Christian and as a Jesus follower, I find this essential. Like, I've got to read this. I've got to get into this. How can I model my life and my drumming and my business and everything I do after Jesus? But hey, even if you are not a Christian, even if you're not a Jesus follower, there's so much to be learned by this. Because Jesus was one of the most effective and productive people ever. And yet, like I said, he wasn't in a hurry. And that's so fascinating to me. And so there's a huge takeaway from this book and something that John Mark Comer says, and this is why I want you to read it. He says, hurry is incompatible with joy. And something that he talks about is how in the Bible, we're told to have love, joy, and peace. Those are things we need to do, things we need to embody. And if you think about it, so any time that you're hurrying, if you're hurrying through life, that probably means that you're a little bit stressed. It probably means that you're frustrated with circumstances and people around you. How well are you going to be able to love while you're hurrying? How well are you going to have peace when you're hurrying? And how joyful are you going to be when you're hurrying? It seems so obvious, but yet we don't think about this stuff. And Jesus teaches it and tells us this. And for some reason, we don't take notice of these things that would make our lives significantly better and just might make our drumming progress and our drumming journeys to mastery a lot better. Hurry is incompatible with joy. You can't love other people, you can't have peace, and you can't have joy if you're hurrying. But yet all we do is hurry through life. And I know I'm getting on a soapbox here and going off on a tangent, but I promise you this has everything to do with what we're talking about today. If you're trying to reach drumming mastery, if you're trying to hurry through your drumming journey to reach mastery as fast as possible, you're probably not going to find much joy in the process. Yes, you should have a goal that you fix your eyes on and you say, okay, this is what I want to do. But if there's no joy through the process, if you're just hurrying, all you can do is get there. You're not enjoying the process of learning the drums, and instead you're trying to rush through it. You're probably going to feel stressed. You're going to feel burdened. And you're always going to be feeling like you're not good enough because you're never going to be as good as you want to eventually get. You're always going to be setting these lofty goals ahead of you that you're never ultimately going to reach, and you're going to run out of time before you're ever able to reach them. Something else John Mark Comer says in the book is we're all going to have unfinished symphonies. We are all going to have things that we don't get done before the end of our lives. And that's just the way it is. We all have limited time. We have human limitations. Yes, we're told, you can do anything. You can dream big dreams and go accomplish anything. And that's what we should strive to do. But there are going to be things unfinished. And so if you're not enjoying the process and you don't find joy in the process, then you're probably not going to grow as fast, and you're probably not ultimately going to master the drums. So here's what this boils down to. Slow down, be thankful for the progress you've made, however small. Have fun in the process, and only compare yourself with where you were yesterday. Now, I say all that, don't mishear me, because do be ambitious, set goals, work hard, aim for the moon. Like say, I want to do this on the drums in the next 10 years. I want to do this in the next 1 or 2 years. That's awesome, because remember that anything worth doing takes a lot of hard work. And so you've got to work hard at this. You've got to set the goals and say, this is what I want to do, and actually stick to it and not just be flaky and quit. You've got to stick to this stuff. But it's going to take time. It's going to take time. I have a bunch of students that are in my paid membership community, and a big pitch for that membership community is, hey, you join this and I'm going to help you get from total beginner to able to gig with a band in 12 months. And I believe completely that that is true, that you can get to where, total beginner to able to play with a band in 12 months. For myself, back when I was in high school, I hadn't been playing drums long at all, and I got, thrown into a band, and I was able to do it. It didn't sound good, but trial by fire, and I learned, and I've seen this in student after student, and you are able to do that. But even though this is totally achievable, we're missing the point if we're only focusing on the destination. If our only focus is on getting there to being able to play with a band and not also enjoying the process, then we're missing the point. And besides that, if you're not enjoying the process, odds are you still won't be happy and satisfied even when you reach the big goal. And that's something we kind of have to let that settle in too, that if we're not enjoying the process, then we probably will not feel like enough even when we've gotten to our destination. Even when you reach the big thing that you thought was going to do it for you, you're going to get there and you're probably still not going to be happy. You're probably still not going to have joy and peace, and you're not going to feel that good about it because you're only going to be fixating on the next thing. And so it is so critical that you enjoy the process. So question for you as you go, and you don't have to answer this in the comments. This is just something for you to ponder. But if you want to answer it and put it out there in writing, awesome. Do you feel like you're hurrying through the drumming process? And by hurry, we don't just mean, you're trying to, squeeze in as much practicing as you can into 15 minutes, or you're trying to, reach these goals as fast as possible. It's not really just that. It's more of the mindset of it. Like, are you so fixated on accomplishing this or getting this done or reaching this goal by this time that you're frustrated constantly because you feel like you're not growing fast enough? Really, that's the big symptom. And really, I could rephrase this question as, are you constantly frustrated with feeling like you're not growing fast enough? That was the question I asked you back at the very beginning of today. Have you dealt with feeling like you're not growing fast enough on the drums? Because if you answer yes to that, if you've ever felt like you're not enough, you're not where you ought to be, that means you're hurrying. That's our definition of hurry in this case. And so have you been hurrying through the drumming process? What is the best action you can take to remedy that? Is it finding joy in small bits of growth? Is it keeping track of your wins? Is it recording yourself so you can go back and see where you were last week or last month? Maybe it's reading this book. This is a really good book. Like I said, whether or not you're a Christian, Jesus is somebody you can learn a lot from, and you're going to learn a lot from that book. And it's so interesting to look at the life of one of the most effective people in history and how much he got done in 3 years and how he wasn't in a hurry. There are so many stories in the Bible of Jesus specifically, like intentionally doing the opposite of hurrying, and yet he still got things done and still accomplished his mission. So cool. And so what do you need to do? I want you to enjoy the journey. I want you to find joy in your drumming, and I want you to not be frustrated by a lack of growth because we all grow at different paces. You've got to enjoy the journey. So I hope this has been helpful to you. I know this has been a really deep mindset kind of lesson. Definitely the opposite of some of the other ones we've been doing lately where we're more technical and exercise based, but you got to have all of this. You can't master the drums if you don't have the right mindsets as well. And so that's a huge part of it too. So I wish you the best. I wish you the best on this as you move forward and as you organize your practice sessions and set goals and stay focused on what you need to be focused on. I hope this has been valuable to you. If you stuck with me through this entire lesson, thank you for spending time with me because I know that your time is the most valuable thing you've got. And so I appreciate you hanging out with me today. I hope this has been really helpful to you. So as always, know that you can do this. I'll see you on the next lesson. Stay non-glamorous.